An entire unit of Russian Marines from the 155th Separate Brigade of the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Federation was destroyed by paratroopers of the 82nd Separate Airborne Assault Bukovinian Brigade in the Kursk direction. These Russian Marines were known for shooting Ukrainian prisoners, but as the paratroopers note, the hunt for invaders was successful and will continue further. And also in the Kursk region, Ukrainian fighters are turning entire columns of Russian equipment into. In particular, the fighters of the 82nd Air Assault Brigade hit several Russian vehicles. After being hit, they caught fire. The crew of the invaders tried to abandon the destroyed vehicles and take cover nearby.
Putin is not interested in Kursk. Its people are not interesting because Russians truly do not spare their own. I will say this again. But let's say as an element of pressure on President Trump, we will see what today's rhetoric is like. The escalation of this rhetoric is happening and how the Kremlin reacts to the rhetoric of the American president. For them, of course, it is very important that there is no defense force on the territory of the Russian Federation. I am speaking now about counterattacking actions as a defense instrument, which are also taking place in the Kursk region. Somewhere the gray zone has increased, but there are positions that the Russians, they went there, tried to hold on, but with counterattacking actions, ours pushed them out of their positions, improving their tactical situation.
Meanwhile, on the eastern sections of the front, particularly in the Lyman direction, the Russian army attacked in the areas of the settlements of Novaya, Krugliakovka, Druzilyubovka, Grekovka, Kopanki. In the Kramatorsk direction, the defense forces repelled enemy assaults near Orekhovo, Vasilievka, Novomarkovo, Chasovo Yar, Stupochki. At Pokrovsky, there were battles near the settlements of Yelisavetovka, Mirolubovka, Promen, Novo-Alexandrovka, Bogdanovka, Andreyevka, and Ulakli.
In the Pokrovsky direction, the enemy is regrouping today. They are forming flank attacks, primarily from the western flank. They are moving in that direction. They are conducting rotation there, as I already mentioned. And by the way, I want to note that it is precisely in the Pokrovsky the most combat-ready units of the Russian army have been assembled in this direction today. These are units that represent not just one group of troops, but several fighting on the Russian-Ukrainian front. Although considering the nature of the combat operations, a lot of IPV drones are being used. Artillery is working, so to speak. The large-scale offensive that the enemy had planned for this time is somewhat stalled.
The results of combat operations at the front in the area of Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region and in the Zaporizhzhia region, shared by the warriors of the Krylo unit, which is part of the Active Operations Department of the Main Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. In particular, Ukrainian fighters burned 3 Russian armored vehicles, Tiger, 2 infantry fighting vehicles and hit 3 T-72 tanks. Also by pilots, FPV drones spotted fire positions and shelters of the Russians, locations where personnel were gathered, vehicles and military equipment. This is how the operators of strike drones from the Special Operations Center of the SSU eliminate Russians on the battlefield on one of the front sections. The fighters say they came up with a game with simple rules. Whoever gets in the sights of their drone loses. In this way, 468 Russian occupiers lost in 1 week.
The Russian losses are just insane. Some of my colleagues are already comparing them to the losses of the Soviet army during World War II. And they say that in some areas, particularly around Novoselka, these losses per square kilometer are just enormous. There has never been anything like this in history.
But over the past day, the Russian army lost 1,650 of its soldiers. Also destroyed were 7 tanks, 37 armored vehicles, 14 artillery systems, and 51 UAVs were shot down. Additionally, the Ukrainian Defense Forces hit 79 units of vehicles and special equipment, as well as fuel tanks.